Hi, my name is Kyla Chantel. Welcome. So today I'm going to be sharing my experience of moving from Canada to the US and how I was able to do that without having a green card. So I will share why I ended up moving, what the process was like in terms of immigration and finding work, and then also the different things you have to keep in mind that need to be done that you may not think of when making that transition. So let's get right into the video. So the first thing is I am from Canada. I was born and raised there, specifically from Toronto, and I went to university in the US. I went to school in Michigan, and once I graduated, I was looking for work, and one of my teachers from this school recommended me for a job that was located in Indiana. I went over there and they actually offered me the job on the spot. So after some thought and prayer, I decided I'll take the job. So that's why I initially moved to the US. In terms of the process and how it works, as a Canadian, there's an agreement between Canada and the US, also Mexico, that allows citizens to work in the US on a temporary work visa. It's called a TN. So there's different professions that fall under this area that allows you to work in the US. So I'm an accountant, and that's one of the positions. There's also, I believe, teaching, social work, nursing, probably engineering, computer engineer. There's a whole list, so you can check it out to see if your profession may fall under, if this is something you're interested in. But that's the path that I took. So with the TN visa, it's very convenient because all you need to do is first have a job offered to you. Then they're required to write a letter, and there's specific things that they need to point out in the letter, such as how long you're going to be working for them. The TN visa, it has a 3-year period, and you also have to specify how much you're going to be making, your role and your job duties, because they need to know that the work you're doing falls under your profession. You take that letter with you to the border, and once you get there, you let them know that you're here to apply for the TN, and you have to go inside. You'll meet with a security officer to have an interview. So they review your letter and your information, and based on that, they will say yes or no if they will approve you for the work permit. One thing with the TN is that it's supposed to be temporary, so you also have to prove that you're not trying to stay in the US permanently. So whether it's that you have assets in Canada, family, I don't know, anything just to show that you're not trying to be in the US permanently. But it's kind of interesting because even though it's a temporary work permit, they allow you to renew it indefinitely. So you can really renew it forever, which is so interesting because that means I technically could stay here permanently, but on the temporary work permit. So I've had many experiences renewing my TN visa because I've been in the US for a while now, and a few times I have had issues because my job title didn't match what was on the listing of an accountant, and so I have been denied once. I've also been almost denied, and the officer was like, well, I'll just give you the benefit of the doubt. So you really have to be specific in your letter with your job title and make sure everything matches what they will be looking for. But once you get it, it's very easy. You're immediately approved, and then you can start working right away, and you're able to move and everything is smooth. So the immigration part of the process is really not that difficult with the TN visa compared to some of the other visas, such as an H-1B. That one involves a lot more paperwork, it's more expensive, and there's a lot more legalities to it. And I think because that visa is dual intent, so where you can actually apply for permanent residency from that one, whereas a TN visa is temporary, which is different. Comment down below if you'd like to hear about my experience with the H visa in a different video. So once I got approved for the TN and I moved to Indiana, there were a lot of things I had to do that was a bit challenging as a Canadian coming to the US for the first time. and I'll share a few of those experiences with you. So the first thing is that you may need to apply for a social security number. I personally didn't need to since I studied as a student in the US before. I already had one, but I know of others who needed to do that, and that process in and of itself could be a bit challenging. So that's one thing that you would need to do in order to start working. The second thing is coming to the US. I was considered as not having any credit history, and that was really difficult because, for one, I needed to find a place to live. So I was trying to find an apartment, and almost no apartments would approve me because I had no credit history, and I didn't have anyone really to be co-signing for me either. So I got turned down at a lot of places. I finally found one place that was willing to accept me, but it really was not in the best area. It was not the best apartment. It was pretty old and run down, but that's the only place I could find. And I actually had my place broken into. It was just a whole thing, and that's all because I didn't have credit history. I also couldn't even get a proper credit card because of the lack of history. I was only able to get what they call a secured credit card, which is basically they give you a dollar limit, and mine was $300, which is basically nothing. So that's how I was able to build my credit. I could not even finance a car. Like, at that time, I was just out of school and I didn't have a car, and where I was in Indiana, you needed a car to get anywhere. I was outside of Indianapolis, so not in the city but on the edge. Trying to get a car through financing was not even, I was not getting approved by anyone. So thankfully, my parents were willing to buy the car for me out of pocket. They said this was my graduation gift. I was planning to pay them back, but they said that would be my gift for graduating. So I'm very thankful to them for that, and that really helped me to be able to get the car. The other thing that I had to get was a driver's license. So I did have a Michigan license. In Canada, I ended up getting my G2 license, where I did the written test, and I did the road test. I never did the second test to get the G, but I switched my license when I was in school in Michigan. But then from Michigan to Indiana getting the license, I had to do a written test over again. And I thought it would be so easy. I went to do the test, I didn't study for it, and I failed. So definitely you need to study for the test because you really think you know all the rules of the road, but they ask very specific questions that you may not know off the top of your head. So I recommend definitely study for the test. And it varies by state, depending what state you go to when you're switching your license. They'll either require you to do a written test and a road test, or just a written test. I've moved to other states since living in Indiana, and some of them I haven't had to do any tests, just switch my license over. So it really depends on the state. So those were the few things I experienced and the few challenges I ran into. But my job was very helpful in supporting me with my move. They covered my moving expenses, and during the time when I couldn't find an apartment, they actually put me up in a hotel. So that was really kind of them. The other thing that was really different for me going to the US was the healthcare system. So in Canada, healthcare is free. You know, we do pay really high taxes. So is it really free? I don't know. But the difference in the US, since you have to pay a copay anytime you need to see a doctor, whether it's an appointment, a walk-in clinic, you have to pay a copay, and depending on your insurance determines how much you have to pay. And that's something that I was not used to. Thankfully, I don't have to go to the doctor very often, but when I do, it was just like, oh, why do I have to pay? Like, if I'm paying insurance already for insurance, why do I have to also pay when I come to your office to see you? So that's something that I had to get used to. But other than that, the only other challenging thing, of course, was just moving to another country, somewhere where I didn't know anyone, I didn't have any friends there. So building up a social life again. It was not terrible. In the beginning, I would say it was kind of lonely for me, but I was able to find a church family that had a young adult group that I got involved with, and that really helped with meeting people and getting to make relationships and friendships, and that helped a lot. So I was thankful for that. The workplace that I was at was a smaller office, and actually it was a lot of older employees. I was the youngest person there at the time. So that was challenging too, in terms of work being a place to like make friends and things. It's really hard when you're in your adult life, at least for me, to make friends compared to when you're in school, like in university. It's a lot easier to make friends. You're seeing people every day, you're taking classes with people, and you could connect on those levels. But once you move out of that environment into the real world, in the workforce, it's a lot different, and you have to be a lot more intentional about meeting people and building those connections, and it really takes time. So you have to put in the effort if you really want to make friends and make it worth your while. And so that's what I did, and I had a good experience while living in Indiana. So that was my experience with moving from Canada to the US. Let me know down in the comments if you have any questions or about the process and the immigration, and I can share more about that. And if you're interested to know what it's like going through the H-1B visa process, and also if you have a spouse or a family that you're trying to move with, I can share about that too. Don't forget to subscribe and like the video. Thanks so much for watching. I'll catch you in the next one. Bye.